Welcome back to Plain Speak, where we dive into the intersection of technology and customer support. So today we are thrilled to have Tanner Nelson, a head of customer experience and human development, join us. But as we'll explore a little bit, CX wasn't always on his radar. Tanner originally planned to join the Navy, but then shifted gears after an unexpected injury occurred just before he shipped out to basic training. Thankfully, Tanner, you're healthy. You've landed in the dynamic field of customer experience, especially in 2024, and he's been leading it ever since. So Tanner's career in customer support started as an agent at a financial services company and has since evolved into many different roles across a bunch of different industries. During today's Plain Speak, I'm really excited for us to talk a little bit about how Tanner's diverse background influences his approach to customer experience, which emphasizes empathy and human connection and growth and mentorship supported by technology. So Tanner today leads a CX group that is intimately focused on creating highly personal interaction. He plays a crucial role in ensuring that the customer experience aligns with the innovative spirit of the company's products. So for any of us joining you for the first time, welcome. I'm your host, Liz Tsai, the CEO and founder of Hi Operator. Hi Operator is the leading customer support solution that scales dynamically based on a company's evolving needs. Our tools, including Highlight, Hi Auto, SMS Bot, QA Scout that we just launched this week, leverage NLP workflow automation and generative AI to handle complex customer requests and helping manage your overall customer experience team. So for our listeners, if you have questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the chat wherever you're watching here. We will try to address them during the session, or we will follow up on LinkedIn later. So Tanner, welcome to Plain Speak. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's going to be awesome. So Tanner, as we sort of touched on a little bit now, your career was set in one direction and then abruptly changed. Can you tell me a little bit about that transition and also how your early career experiences shaped your approach to customer experience in your current role?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, as you kind of indicated, I had my whole life kind of mapped out for me. I was born into a multi-generational military family, so yeah, was fully invested on that direction, and really got to a place where it was just kind of like a foregone conclusion just about, and then got into a four-wheeling accident, and one thing turned into another, and landed in the position that you mentioned as a customer support rep in financial services. So honestly, like what kind of landed me there was just looking around, seeing what jobs are available. I live in Utah, and we're kind of a mecca for customer support roles by and large. And it's been great. So honestly, like I think just being in an industry where I can make myself of service to somebody else is really what's kind of kept fueling the fire, so to speak.
I love that. Yeah, Utah is definitely this mecca of customer support expertise. There's a ton of experience and growth there. And, as you said, you sort of landed there. And I think sometimes customer service agents often land there, right, as an initial job, maybe out of college or during school. But I think what struck me as we've spoken, Tanner, is really what kept you there. What sort of not just drew you in as, hey, I need a job, but what's kind of kept you in the world of customer service? And how do you think that's impacted the way that you think about customer experience strategy and your mindset and your values towards that?
Yeah, I think, we all need a job, right? So it's like, okay, what are the best jobs available around my area? So a little bit of it was happenstance, but what keeps me in customer experience is people. Like, I think to my whole family's kind of arc is all about service. How can I make a positive impact on somebody's day? And I love problem solving as well. And I think that customer support, customer experience is generally a good intersection of the two. So it keeps me mentally stimulated in a lot of different regards. No 2 days are the same. And I think having such a diverse set of problems to solve, along with being able to connect with people, has really just kept me fulfilled long term.
I love that. And I love that you always emphasize that, human connection and human empathy when it comes to customer support. So we are in 2024, super exciting time to be in CX, right? We are a year and some change past the launch of ChatGPT at this point. But when we think about what actually makes an impact sort of day to day in the world of customer service orgs, when you think about, Tanner, your expertise in both people as well as technology, how do you balance and think about technological efficiency with human empathy and customer support? How do you balance that tech and human empathy?
Yeah, it's tough, honestly, right? I mean, you mentioned the last year and a half, especially, have just kind of flipped the industry on its head. I think it would be naive of me to not embrace the technology. I think there's a big emphasis on people, but I think our industry has also historically had a lot of room for let's just say better using human consciousness, right? Like through creating human connection. How do I augment human consciousness with technology to really eliminate the mundane and get people working on problems that they actually want to be working on. And so I think that really that balance is tough to strike. But there are many benefits of finding that balance as well. Namely, for customers is just timely support. How do we become as operationally efficient as possible? And through keeping people stimulated, we can build great product expertise, and through tenure and just continued growth, you get to a place where you're not just constantly trying to relearn the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's using technology to really augment what your agents and experts are doing there. Now, I know we talked about how your agents often are users of your product, right? And we've heard this from other CX experts that we've had on Plain Speak, like Joe Lynch at Dandy mentioned how every agent that they've worked in dentistry in some ways. They bring that expertise. Devlin O'Neill talked about how, the seasonal workers that he hired at Lululemon were often, power customers and users of their products. Tell me a little bit about how you think about agents being users and experts on your products and how you weave that into the overall support, culture, and mentorship.
Yeah, I think this is tremendously important. There's no replacement for a level of empathy than somebody who uses the product or service that they support. So obviously, huge plus if somebody comes to you wanting to support your product or service with experience as a member of the community already. But if not a member of the community to start, you have to become a user, because at the end of the day, for me, it's really about a level of authenticity that you can't fake. You have to be part of the community that you're supporting. Otherwise, the people that you are supporting will end up knowing more than you, and you won't be able to relate with them. And I think, especially as I look forward to the future, the roles that human play, right? Because all the automated stuff, it's like, hey, giving somebody a tracking number, we can automate that. That's not a problem. The important thing is human to human connection. That's something that automation and AI hasn't been able to truly replicate yet.
Gotcha. Makes sense. And sort of double back a little bit on something you said, we talked about earlier, sort of the balance of human and automation, right? Because I feel like maybe prior to this last year, there was a lot of a one-to-one correlation where it was like, if you wanted to increase efficiency of your team, you just had to drive them to go faster, right? And it was very much, okay, well, how are we going to become 20% more efficient? We need average handle times to be 20% less. How do you drive that wheel? Right. And I think what's really exciting to me, at least personally, in 2024, is that automation, generative AI, to some extent, allows us to decouple that. Right. And what that means, and what we've been seeing a lot of, and I love your thoughts on, is what that means for the future role of customer support. Right. So we actually found at some point that gamers made really great customer support agents in the old model because they were hitting their metrics, they're hitting their high scores, they're hitting that, resolution rate and average handle time rate. But I think what you said is, as we think about automating a lot of those, hey, you know what? Automation can provide tracking numbers at a rate of 1,000 tracking numbers a minute, right? That doesn't need to be human anymore. How do you think about what that career path growth and goal, that ultimate ideal, then starts to look like for the customer service agent?
Yeah, that's a really big question, and there's a lot of different directions that you could take it in, right? But I think it ultimately expands like because historically, you're absolutely right. It's just like, okay, I'm an agent. My next role is to be a coach or a team lead. My next role after that is X, Y, Z, right? So from this standpoint, I think it's really important for us to really recognize, okay, cool. This is opening a whole new world of possibilities. Like I can work on building automated flows. I can get into the world of data. There's a lot of different layers of expertise that I think customer experience is kind of wrapping its hands around now that really should broaden people's like scope and just I guess aperture, right? Where can you take a career in customer experience? Pretty much anywhere you want to.
Yeah.
And that ultimately I think is like when I really look at the people that have gotten where they're trying to go, it's the people that take that level of responsibility and ownership and have a really clear like vision to make what they need to make happen. And yeah, I think it's super exciting for anybody in customer experience, in my view.
Yeah, it's an exciting sort of green field there, right? There isn't that set path anymore because, yeah, it used to be, you team lead, you manage the entire, and you just sort of grow from there. Whereas now, I think an entirely valid path is you're managing a whole lot of bots, which essentially means you're managing a whole bunch of robot agents.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely, right. And for some people that's better, right? Like if you don't want to be a people leader, that's totally okay. But historically it was like, okay, if I don't want to be a people leader, then my career gets pretty pigeonholed. And I think that being able to be much wider now is super exciting.
I love that. I love that. And I think that drives a little bit what we talked about, which is it gives sort of space for the industry to shift more towards mentorship and culture, right? To think about, hey, be really intentional about what does that team look like. And I'd love to, for you to share a little bit about, that move into human development. Tell me about, how you think about continuous coaching and mentorship and what that means to you within the teams you've worked with.
Yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, like people is what keeps me in my space, right? So you talk to me candidly about like a world where like, hey, all of our agents are now robots, like that doesn't interest me, right?
Yeah.
But there's always going to be people behind the automation and behind the technology. There always is and always has been. And that's where I find my motivation. So as I think about like human development and coaching and mentorship, that ultimately is what determines somebody's like sustainable long-term fulfillment in their role. Like you have to connect them to a level of purpose and you have to give them something that they're working toward.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's you start to question like what you're doing with your time. And as we all know, we spend a lot of time at work. So it's really important for me that we find fulfillment in the work that we do day to day.
I love that. Yes, that sense of fulfillment, ownership, purpose, I think you've spoken a good amount about, which is what makes this more of a career rather than, a role, right? Because I think for me anyway, at least I've always believed that humans really are sort of the heart and soul of designing the customer experience and executing on that experience, right? And what you touched on is, yeah, but how do you lift them away from the mundane, right? How do you say, okay, well, something that's a tracking or a simple logistical execution, let's automate that and let's put the agents somewhere where they're uniquely positioned to help, right? And automation can provide the tracking, but what can the agent do that provides an additional layer that really says, hey, you're the human there, and that's a unique value that you're providing.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that you bring that up, right? Like our role in customer support is oftentimes thankless, right? And I've like you hear some people call it soul sucking or soul crushing. Like that's real,
Pulling
but
up,
it's the mundane part of the role. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. So it's like, okay, if we can get rid of the mundane, then the role becomes very interesting and stimulating in a lot of different respects as well. And that's yeah, again, something to look forward to in my opinion.
definitely. So I think the next 12, 24 months, there's going to be a ton of opportunity for CX leaders to, okay, look, general AI, the magical agent that can do everything, right, is not going to be here probably in the next 12 months. But I think there's going to be a lot of exciting opportunity for leaders to weave automation tools into their team's workflows. Is there anything in particular, Tanner, that you've pulled in that you've really enjoyed? Or as you look forward, 24 months or a couple of years, what is the ideal sort of experience that you think you're looking to craft for both agents as well as customers and consumers?
Ideal for me is always one-stop shop, right? How do you create diversity in the role for the people that are providing the experience, but how do you provide the best customer experience possible? And for me, anytime you have to get transferred to somebody else, it's like, okay, I have to wait in another queue, right? So one-stop shop, that's the best experience. You reach out to one person, no matter what your issue is with whatever product or service you're reaching out to. They can help you out with anything and everything. That gives a degree of ownership in the customer experience to the person providing that experience as well, that isn't oftentimes found. And it just engages you at a really deeper level. So that frankly is my ideal and what I'm always striving to create, if at all possible.
So that's a magical experience for the customer, consumer. But what you've done now is moved a lot of complexity over to the agent and service side. How do you do that? How do you do that? How are you pulling in data? How are you anticipating? Tell me about how you think about that process of, yes, it's exciting for the customer, but you've taken all the complexity. How are you now managing that complexity on the service side?
Yeah, and that's where a lot of technology and really tools, automations like really come into place, right? Because we have data that lives all over. So it's like whether it's CRM data or sales data or anything like that, it's pulling in what is going to be necessary to create a great experience. So it's understanding like, okay, what tier of customer are you, right? What product do you have? What service are you subscribed to? Whatever it is that you're doing, making sure that it's visible and upfront and synthesized as well as possible for the customer support agent to understand the context of why this customer is coming to you. And it's like from there, it really progresses really quickly. But from an agent's perspective, it's really making sure that they have easy access to all the information that they might need in order to effectively support your customer. So knowledge base is really, really important, right? Because we can never expect somebody to know the answer to every question, but I can expect an agent to be able to find the answer to any question as long as those resources exist. If those resources don't exist, that's a different problem, but we need to establish a culture of feedback where agents really feel comfortable as well in delivering the feedback necessary to be able to get us to where we need to be from an information perspective.
That information perspective is really interesting because I think what you're saying is, how do you make sort of a single pane of glass, all that data in that cockpit for your agents so they're able to really perform and succeed in the role that they're placed in to some extent. Because I know you've also talked about how, data is not just so much about metrics and outputs. The teams that you work with use a lot of data to think about understanding and anticipating customer needs in order to provide a tailored solution, right? Because yes, chatbots and AI-driven tools, they can be customer-facing, they can be for efficiency, but you can also use it to gather more sort of real-time feedback from your interactions, right? And use that to help your team be a little bit more agile.
Yeah, 100%. There's always like the quantitative output, but the qualitative input is just as important. So yeah, making sure that we have effective measures for both pieces of the customer experience, and yeah, getting as proactive as possible. Like that's kind of been the magic or the buzzword of customer experience for the last decade, right? It's like, how do we get proactive instead of reactive? And the answer to that is data.
Yeah. Are there some specific examples here that you've seen either move some metrics or do really well? Like, yes, we love proactivity and think the tech is finally starting to be there to enable teams to do that. But I think a lot of leaders sometimes go, well, where do I start with that? Right? How can I start to think through that?
Yeah, and I would say the starting point's going to differ from business to business, right? But yeah, I think in respect to like the starting point for me, it's always recognizing like what are really the big drivers in customer dissatisfaction, and what are some potential solves for that, and not being afraid to be wrong, like test, try, share, right? A/B testing is something that's really important that I've seen a lot of value in historically, but every customer base is a little different. So it's tough for me to answer that question specifically, as it's applicable in different ways to every business. But yeah, I think for me that at a high level, that's always a good starting point, is understanding like what is driving the most friction for your customer. So again, it kind of gets back to being a customer yourself, right? Testing those journeys, doing the journey mapping, and really recognizing like, okay, if I'm a customer, where is it that I'm feeling pain, and how do I resolve for that?
That makes sense. And I think one of the themes that at least I've been seeing a lot of is instrumentation, right? Just how do you take the customer journey? And yes, at some point, if something's gone wrong, they've gone off track, they have now reached out to customer support. Great. How do you take the steps before that and try and instrument and figure out, are they falling out somewhere? Is there a specific point where people get stuck? And trying to weave it all in as part of overall CX. That's been, I think, really interesting to see, in a way that I think some industries like marketing have done a ton of, like click optimization, page optimization, and customer CX is starting to get some of that, which is really exciting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
super exciting time, right? From a technology perspective, there's no doubt about that.
definitely, definitely, definitely. Okay, so when we look forward, now that I guess we're still in Q1 of 2024, you know, what is your vision for customer support in the context of a leading company of personal technology? You know, how do you see the roles of customer support evolving to change the changing needs and expectations of customers as well? I think maybe there's this expectation that as we move to more automation, consumers are maybe a little bit more open to that. They're expecting that a little bit more as well. How do you think about that? And how do you think about that as you train your agents and work on that continuous developing and mentorship that you've moved into?
Yeah, I think step one is always be a customer, right? Like that's always kind of the first part of any trading program, in my view. If you're coming to us and you're not a customer already, we need to get you to become a customer so
How do
that
you
you
do that?
can buy in and really understand. So let's say, for example, like, I don't know, you're a consumer electronic brand. Maybe you deal with headphones or something like that, right? It's like, cool. Day one, I'm going to throw you the headphones that the customers are using and just tell you to have at it, right? You're going to
Yeah.
become a customer. I want you to really understand, like, what is the setup experience? What problems do you run into? Things like that, right? If you're a streaming platform, it's like, okay, what all goes into getting logged in, getting signed up? What are you going to have any type of connectivity issues with your internet? There's so many different variables here. So becoming a customer allows you to start to uncover those variables, and cover at least 50% of what customers are going to be reaching out to you about. And then it's really methodically helping them understand the why behind what they're experiencing. What is it that's causing said problem? And getting into tools and resources from there, right? I think, at least in my view, historically, we've spent a lot of time on trying to train people what to say, when to say, how to say,
Yep.
instead of thinking dynamically and really having the empowerment and ownership to think critically about the problem that you're trying to solve and be agnostic to the solution, right? There's many ways that you can solve many problems, and as long as the customer is thrilled with the experience that they get at the end of the day, I'm stoked. Problem solved, customers happy. That's the mark of a great experience, in my view. So lots of different, obviously, ways to measure if that was efficient or the right resolution, et cetera. But that's kind of where my head goes with that.
Yeah, it sounds like it's not so much, hey, here's the exact process to follow it. It's really trying to cultivate this sense of goal-oriented support, right? And then a ton of accountability and ownership through that.
Exactly,
So,
yeah. And it's like create a safe space, right? Let somebody take a chance, make a mistake, because oftentimes those mistakes that we make, like those are the biggest learning points for us. So yeah, I want to encourage chance taking at all possible junctions, because that's where we learn the most and that's where we innovate.
Absolutely. The last question for you on here is, what are from more of a human development coaching, grading perspective at scale to some extent, are there any tips for rolling that into the QA and coaching program? Like, how do you, one, because I mean, any QA and coaching and mentorship quality program, they do need to make sure, hey, these are the things that are being hit, but how do you allow for space for that? How do you encourage that as part of the incentives and guidelines for an agent?
Yeah, that's a good question that I'm interested to hear your thoughts on as well. But to be honest, like I'm pretty incentive. Pay
Okay.
for performance models for me, like I don't believe in them. I don't think that they're sustainable long term, because it's an extrinsic motivator. So what I try to do is make sure that, like, hey, if you're here solving problems as part of our team, like you're compensated fairly for the work that you're doing, right? It kind of takes that motivator out of the question, and then we focus on really like internal intrinsic motivators. How do we connect people to purpose?
Yep.
And how do we wrap that into like a QA model? It is a QA model that is 100% controllable by the individual, that is providing the experience, and it's behavior based. Now we're going to have data outputs on qualitative like inputs, and through doing QA evaluations and things like that. There's a layer of subjectivity that transparently does make this a little bit more challenging, in terms of like needing to constantly be calibrated and updating alignments, things of that nature. But at least in my experience, when you keep the focus on a behavior that is controllable by the individual, that functions as a good balance or counterbalance to the output that is quantitative, whether that be CSAT, Net Promoter Score, or anything like that. I want a balance that is controllable 100% of the time by the individual, because that helps us understand, okay, for example, let's say you get a bad customer satisfaction survey, right? All that is to me is an indicator of a possible learning opportunity. That does not mean that you necessarily did anything that you weren't supposed to do. So enter qualitative insights that we get through QA evaluations. If you scored great in QA, then that should inform, okay, this is something that we should change or should work to change, or something that we don't really need to worry about changing in the short term. And then from there, as I look forward to coaching, coaching is all about getting people to focus on a behavior that they have control over, right? Control the
Yep.
controllables is something that I've always said, and something that I will likely always say. I don't
I
want you
love
spending time or consciousness on like things that you can't control.
control the controllables. That's awesome. And I think what I'm hearing there is that it's not so much, there's no metric that exists in isolation. It's all about taking it in context and putting it aside with the qualitative measures to try and get the full story of what's happening, right? I do wish we had more time to dive into this. I think this is super interesting because, yeah, I mean, when it comes to CSAT, we on our side, we think about people, product, process, right? People can control the people component of it, but there's a lot more that goes into that. And the value is not so much the end score. The value is understanding the levers and understanding the composition of that. Super, super cool. The last thing we think about a lot there is trying to figure out how we can do continuous coaching, right? Because your 10 QAs a week is kind of scary, right? Versus, hey, can we find ways to give continuous coaching throughout the day and throughout a week? But Tanner, there's a ton more to talk about there. I feel like we should do some follow-up around that. But in the interim, to close us out here, give me any last words you have on sort of summarizing the future of CX. What are you most excited about next 12 months?
Yeah, I think for me, what I'm most excited about is definitely eliminating the mundane. I know we've already talked about that a bit, but I think making customer support and customer experience a career for a lot of people, and helping people recognize like the opportunities that exist is a thrilling venture, because I think historically it's like it oh, you work in a call center, right? It's like, oh, that sounds so rough, yada, yada, yada. And I think like getting this to a place where it's like, I mean, think about like where technology's at, right? When we were
Ah,
growing up, it was always go to college, you'll get a good job, things like that, and learn hard skills. But what is technology replacing? And what is technology making a lot more efficient? Hard skills, soft skills, people focus. Like I'm stoked about like what the future looks like, and super excited about what it means for just human to human connection as well.
yeah. Look, customer service, customer experience in a lot of ways is the cutting edge of automation and generative AI right now. That's where you can see theory actually meet execution and real value. Tanner, super appreciate it. So we like to usually close out with a rolling question of the week. So yours is coming from Bernard Slowey, the VP of Digital Customer Success at Salesforce that we spoke to a couple weeks ago. And Bernard would love to know, what pivotal lesson did you glean from your tenure at Netflix that has significantly influenced your professional journey? One, and then two, if you've got a favorite Netflix show.
Oh, Netflix was like, for me, it was a master's degree in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Um, the most important lessons that I took from that, from my time there, were the importance of culture. I know that Netflix is, for better or for worse, love it or hate it, like it is world renowned for culture and really push the boundaries in a lot of ways. So yeah, the importance of culture, human development, and coaching, mentorship. Those are the things that I took from there. Radical responsibility, right? Like we're responsible. We own our career. We own our outcomes.
Wow.
Again, love it or hate it. Love it or hate it. I think like I loved it because it really was a place that it's like, hey, if you can be successful here, you can be successful anywhere. And I've taken a lot of what I've learned there, and a lot of relationships that I built through my time there as well. And it's been great. So yeah, nothing but good things to say on that front.
Love it. Favorite Netflix show?
uh, Peaky Blinders. I'm gonna go with Peaky Blinders.
I love it. Still got to watch that. No, that's a great way to end, Tanner. One last thing for you. For our next Plain Speak guest, Sophie Conti, do you have a rolling question you'd love to ask Sophie?
I always like to kind of get introspective with these. So yeah, I guess like imagine yourself at 76 years old. What advice do you think you would give yourself today? That would be my question.
I like it. It's right about the age of my grandma. I'm not sure I'd want to know her answer. But Tanner, thank you so much. And everyone else, thank you for joining us on today's Plain Speak. If you have any questions from today's discussions or any future topics you'd love for us to explore, please let us know. And don't miss our next Plain Speak episode about the blueprint for scaling customer success on Monday, March 6th at 1 p.m. Eastern, where we'll be joined by Sophie Conti, CEO and founder of Customer Service Lab. Sophie and I will be discussing strategies she learned from the ultra luxury world for building and reinventing customer service teams and rapidly growing companies. I'm excited. It's going to be a really fun session with a lot of valuable insights. So mark your calendars and join us then for Plain Speak. And Tanner, thank you again. Everyone else, super appreciate y'all joining us.